The dancing epidemic or dancing plague of medieval Europe is one of the most intriguing and baffling events in history, a phenomenon that has sparked curiosity and debate among historians, medical experts, and psychologists alike. This mysterious event, which seemed to infect entire communities with an uncontrollable urge to dance until exhaustion or death, appeared primarily during the medieval period, particularly from the 14th to the 17th centuries. The most notable cases of this epidemic occurred in modern-day France and Germany, but it also spread to other parts of Europe. The historical and cultural significance of the dancing epidemic is profound, offering insights into the social, psychological, and medical context of the time. Historical context and main outbreaks. The first major outbreak of the dancing epidemic occurred in the year 1021, but it is the 14th and 16th century episodes that are most widely documented. The most famous case took place in July 1518, in the city of Strasbourg, then part of the Holy Roman Empire, now France. A woman named Frau Troffa suddenly began dancing uncontrollably in the streets. She continued for days, and soon after, dozens of people joined her, eventually growing to hundreds. Despite extreme fatigue and physical pain, the afflicted could not stop dancing. They danced for weeks, and by the end of the month, many had died from heart attacks, strokes, or exhaustion. Local authorities were bewildered by the situation and attempted various remedies, including hiring musicians to accompany the dancers, believing that the plague could be danced away. This, however, only exacerbated the problem. Other outbreaks of the dancing epidemic occurred in places like Aachen in 1374 and Metz in 1519, where similar mass hysteria swept through the population, causing hundreds to dance uncontrollably. These epidemics typically took place in areas already suffering from widespread poverty, famine, and disease, making these communities ripe for such an outbreak of collective psychological distress. Causes and theories. Several theories have been proposed to explain the dancing epidemic, ranging from religious and supernatural beliefs to scientific and medical explanations. The exact cause remains elusive, but there are a few prevailing theories that help contextualize this bizarre phenomenon. 1. Mass hysteria, psychogenic illness. One of the most widely accepted explanations is that the dancing epidemic was a form of mass hysteria or psychogenic illness, a psychological disorder in which a group of people experience the same physical or psychological symptoms with no identifiable physical cause. In the case of the dancing epidemic, it is believed that the intense social pressures, combined with a general atmosphere of fear and uncertainty, may have triggered a collective psychological breakdown. Medieval Europe was a time of immense hardship. Plagues, wars, and famines ravaged the population, leading to extreme levels of stress and anxiety. The population was also deeply religious and superstitious, and these beliefs likely played a role in how the disorder manifested itself. Some individuals may have begun dancing as a way to cope with these overwhelming pressures, and others, seeing them, were influenced to join in. 2. Ergotism, poisoning by fungus. Another prominent theory is that the dancing epidemic was caused by ergotism, a form of poisoning caused by consuming ergot-infected grain. Ergot is a type of fungus that grows on rye and other cereals in damp conditions, which was common in medieval Europe. When consumed, ergot can cause severe symptoms such as hallucinations, convulsions, and spasms, symptoms that closely resemble those exhibited by the afflicted dancers. The idea is that contaminated bread or grain consumed by the population led to these strange behaviors. This theory, while plausible, has been challenged by some historians who argue that ergotism typically produces more violent physical convulsions rather than coordinated dancing movements, making it a less likely explanation for the phenomenon. 3. Religious fervor and superstition. Medieval Europe was a deeply religious society, and religious fervor often played a significant role in shaping people's behavior and beliefs. Many outbreaks of the dancing epidemic occurred in areas where Christian rituals, pilgrimages, and festivals were prominent. Some historians argue that the dancing epidemic may have been related to religious ceremonies or the worship of saints, particularly Saint Vitus. Saint Vitus was considered the patron saint of dancers, and there was a belief that praying to him could cure neurological disorders or Saint Vitus dance, Sydenham's chorea. In some cases, it is believed that people may have been dancing as part of a religious ritual or to seek divine intervention in their suffering. Others may have danced to ward off evil spirits or to gain the favor of the saints. 4. Socioeconomic stress and coping mechanisms. The dancing epidemic also occurred against the backdrop of widespread socioeconomic hardship. The medieval period was characterized by periodic famines, economic instability, and political turmoil. The 14th century, in particular, saw Europe ravaged by the Black Death, which killed a significant portion of the population and left survivors traumatized and struggling to survive. The socio-economic pressures of the time, coupled with the pervasive fear of death and divine punishment, may have contributed to the outbreak of dancing mania. The dancing epidemic could have served as a way for people to express their collective anxiety and cope with the overwhelming hardships of their lives. In this sense, the dancing plague might be seen as a form of social catharsis, a desperate attempt to release pent-up fears and anxieties in a public display of communal suffering. 5. Cultural and folk traditions. In addition to religious and psychological factors, the dancing epidemic may have been influenced by local cultural and folk traditions. In some parts of Europe, dancing was already a part of religious and social festivals, particularly during the midsummer celebrations. Some historians suggest that these festivals, combined with superstitions and religious fervor, may have contributed to the spread of the dancing epidemic. In regions where dancing was already a common practice, it may have been easier for individuals to fall into a state of uncontrolled dancing, either as a result of social pressure or as part of a communal religious or folk ritual. Responses and remedies. The responses to the dancing epidemic varied depending on the region and the authorities involved. In some cases, local leaders sought to treat the afflicted as if they were suffering from a physical or medical condition. For example, in Strasbourg, officials initially hired musicians to accompany the dancers, believing that they could help the dancers dance out the affliction. This strategy, however, proved to be counterproductive, as the music only encouraged more people to join in the frenzy. In other cases, religious solutions were sought. Some towns organized processions to religious shrines or conducted mass prayers in the hope that divine intervention would put an end to the epidemic. Pilgrimages to the shrine of Saint Vitus became particularly common, as he was believed to have the power to cure people afflicted with dancing mania. Some communities even conducted exorcisms, believing that the dancing epidemic was the result of demonic possession or witchcraft. Despite these efforts, there was no clear or consistent remedy for the dancing epidemic, and many of those afflicted continued to dance until they collapsed from exhaustion or died from related complications. The dancing epidemic of medieval Europe remains a fascinating and enigmatic chapter in history. While many theories have been proposed to explain the phenomenon, ranging from ergot poisoning to mass hysteria, no definitive answer has been found. The event reflects the complex interplay of social, psychological, and religious factors that shaped life in medieval Europe, offering insights into how communities dealt with fear, suffering, and collective trauma. Whether viewed as a medical mystery or a cultural phenomenon, the dancing epidemic continues to captivate the imagination of historians and scholars, symbolizing the unpredictability and mystery of human behavior.